Hi, my name is Lorraine Watry and welcome to my studio. I am a watercolor artist and I've worked with watercolor for 26 years now, and I thought I would start a new series of videos where I go over different tips, tricks, and techniques for working with watercolor. And hopefully these short videos will help you in your journey, and if you have a question or a technique that you would like to see, please comment below and I will try to accommodate that in a future video. This tip video is going to go over one of the colors that used to be on my palette, and I use a Stephen Quiller palette. It's listed in my supplies below, and this one is a plastic palette. It's 15 inches by 15 inches, and I like how many colors I can put in here and the portability of it. Other than talking about my whole palette right now, I'm actually going to talk about one color that I had on my palette for a long time, and it was Aureolin Yellow. And the one I used was by Daniel Smith, and I really liked that color, but over time of hearing about possible issues with it from different sources, I finally determined to take it off of my palette. So I had a question about that in a video a while back, and so I thought I would address that. There are a couple other colors that I have taken off my palette because the paint that I have on my palette, I want to make sure that it's not going to fade. And so I have pigments on my palette that are considered the best light fastness or the next step down. So they are either excellent or very good. And in Daniel Smith's line, the way that they mark theirs is a 1 is the best rating, the highest light fast rating, and then it goes down to a 4, I believe, and that would be not light fast. So different brands use a different rating system, and a lot of the brands will have a, let me get one right quick, will have a chart that you can use. And so this is Daniel Smith's chart, and then at the top they have a key, and they talk about the different pigments, and or the key shows their ratings. So for the Daniel Smith paints, they show whether it's a light fast or not. They show if it's non-staining or staining. They show the granulation, if it's granular or not, and then the transparency, whether it's transparent, semi-transparent, or opaque. And so those are all things that are marked under each of their pigments, and different brands will do their ratings differently or have their keys laid out differently. So you can look up a lot of the brands of paint online and type in watercolor chart to see if you can find a chart for that particular brand. So I have both Holbein and Daniel Smith on my palette right now. I used to have Lorraine, Holbein, some Winsor and Newton, some Daniel Smith, and then I just slowly moved to mostly Daniel Smith because I really like their brand, and I talked about that in some other videos, I believe, so I won't go over that right now, but I will get to the Aureolin and why I changed to Holbein's Aureolin instead of Daniel Smith. And for Daniel Smith, I really like the fact that they have 2 scientists on staff that check every batch of the pigment that they create and look for that light fast rating. So I am not quite sure why I found this variation in the pigment, but for the Aureolin Yellow, and I will, let's see if I can show you. I'm trying to show you without showing you how I found that it had a problem. Okay, so Aureolin Yellow for Daniel Smith looks like, whoops, I got the wrong one. Okay, Daniel Smith's Aureolin Yellow should look like this. A vibrant yellow, kind of leans toward green a little bit, and so that's what I had on my palette. And then I decided a while back, since I had heard about issues with it over time, that I would do a test of it. So what I did was I placed a piece of paper outside, and before I show you what it did, I used a piece of tape. I painted a swatch of color, and this is Aureolin, what it should look like, and that's what happened. So what I did was I painted this strip of Aureolin yellow, and then I put a piece of black duct tape over it, and I had it outside for, I think it was about 3 weeks to a month. And in that time, the Aureolin yellow that was in the sunlight, which are these two ends right here, changed to a brownish yellow. And I had tried this similar thing prior. I had put it in a window in our house, but the problem with that was our windows had the UV coating over it, and so I wasn't finding any change. So when I actually put it outside, that's when it had the most dramatic effect, and that sunlight really changed the look of the Aureolin yellow. The other paint that you see here is the Holbein Aureolin hue, and I did not test this one at the same time I tested here. Oh, actually I did, because I do have a tape covering here, but there is no change in the paint during that time. This little patch of orange red right here, this was covered with some tape on that side, and this was out in the sunlight. And you can see how once it was in the sun, the yellow mixed with some red, it was Pearl, Scarlet, and Aureolin. This section right here changed color in the sunlight. And then this is the Holbein's Aureolin with that same mix of Pearl, Scarlet, and it did not change. So there were some changes that in some mixes that I had made in this green as well, where I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tiny edge where it didn't change, and then all of it that was in the sunlight went more of a neutral green rather than the vibrant green that was originally made with the Daniel Smith Aureolin. So when I realized that there was an issue that I really shouldn't be using Aureolin, because over time it could in a painting change and go more of a brown yellow, then I started looking at other pigments and trying to decide what I wanted to use in to replace the Aureolin by Daniel Smith. So I made a chart, and I used my different blues. I used cobalt, ultramarine, cerulean, phthalo green. I used quinacridone rose, pearl scarlet, and sap green across the top. And then down the side I used Aureolin by Daniel Smith. I used Aureolin hue by Holbein. And a hue means that it's made up of more than one pigment. So the Daniel Smith Aureolin is PY40, and the Aureolin hue by Holbein is PY154, PY175, and PY150. And then I also tried Hansa Light, because that was also a suggestion that you could mix with it, and that's a Daniel Smith pigment. And I used Hansa Medium, a Daniel Smith pigment. And so I mixed all of those across, and I feel like the Aureolin hue by Holbein is, for me, closest to what I was seeing with the Aureolin from Daniel Smith. However, these two pigments are close enough that if you didn't have the Holbein Aureolin, or you wanted to stick with Daniel Smith, these are also a good choice to take the place of the Aureolin yellow. So I also took this little patch right here is also the Hansa Medium, and so I placed that over to the side just to see how it compared to those two. And I feel like it's just a little brighter in value, or not value, color, than the Hansa Aureolin. And I didn't want it too vibrant a color because I already had Hansa Light on my palette that takes the place of lemon yellow, and so I wanted it to be just a touch more neutral, and it's very minimal, but yeah, I was very happy with the Holbein Aureolin yellow. So that is why I have removed it from my palette. And then once I decided to use the Aureolin hue from Holbein, then I just did a color swatch here where I used cobalt on both of them, and the old Aureolin from Daniel Smith and the new Aureolin from Holbein, and I wet the area, and then I put the two pigments on either end and let them blur together in the center. So I can see that the greens are very similar. This one didn't quite have as much green in it because of how they mixed, but they're pretty close. This one is a little more vibrant, but I was happy with it overall, and so when I chose to remove the Daniel Smith Aureolin from my palette, I replaced it with another version that is made from 3 pigments, and I do actually have on my palette, all of my pigments are single pigments except for the ones that have X's, and those are paints that either have 2 or 3 pigments in them, and it's just, for me, a way to remember that if I make a mix from those colors or with another color, how many that there is more than one pigment in that color, and it can make a difference when you're mixing things. So the other 2 colors that I am currently testing are Opera, which I know is Fugitive because it even lists it on the Daniel Smith color chart as a Fugitive color, and they chose to keep it in their line because there were so many people that like to use it that they decided to leave it in the line, but it is marked as a 4. And 4 is, where is it? Is Fugitive, meaning that it will only last 15 to 20 years, and then it will basically fade from the paper with light and sunlight and things like that, changing it. The other one that I currently am testing, and I've got color swatches out on a table outside, and I've blocked off a portion of it, is Prussian Blue. And Prussian is somewhat like Aureolin that I heard and tested, and I'm redoing the test to make sure that I didn't do something odd. And Prussian is sort of like Aureolin, where it changes color, and then if you put it away or cover it, can change back. And I haven't tested that part of it, but I saw another video that someone had done on that. So that is the other thing that I would suggest, is if you have a color that you're not certain about, so don't just take my word for it, but if you go and look up Aureolin yellow and problems with light fastness or changing color, that kind of thing, you might find other sources that have already done more comprehensive tests on those colors. And some of it, I believe, the reason that Daniel Smith still has it on their chart is because the ASTM, which is a rating system, gave it a good rating many years ago when it was tested, and so it's not, and there are other companies that still have Aureolin in their line of paint that is a single pigment and is PY40. So anyway, that is, just wanted to put that information out there, and if you're wanting to keep your paintings from fading over time, that I would really look into using pigments that are the excellent or highest 1s and 2 ratings that you can find, and that will help with their longevity. I hope this was a helpful tip, and if you have a tip or trick video that you would like to see with watercolor, please like and subscribe and comment below, and I will fit that into the schedule if it is something that I can put out there for you. I will see you next time. Have a good day. Bye.